What's up YouTube, Saf here on Super Saf TV, and in this video I'm going to be comparing the specs of the Sony Xperia Z2 to the Sony Xperia Z1. Now Sony seem to be releasing their new flagships roughly every 6 months now, so you've had new iterations from the Sony Xperia Z to the Z1 and now to the Z2, and that's within the space of a year. So they really are trying to compete and really trying to improve their devices. But how much difference is there between the Z1 and the Z2? Well, do hit that thumbs up button and let's find out in this head-to-head spec comparison. So starting off with the size difference, the Z2 is ever so slightly taller than the Xperia Z1 at 2.8 millimeters. In terms of width, it's actually 0.7 millimeters smaller, and in thickness, it's 0.3 millimeters thinner as well. So it is pretty compact considering that it has a larger screen. It's got a 5.2 inch screen compared to a 5-inch screen on the Z1. So even though you've got a 0.2 inch larger screen, the size of the device hasn't increased much. It's actually decreased in terms of the width as well as the thickness. It's just the height that's increased slightly. Now the size of the display isn't the only thing that's been upgraded. You've actually got new technology, so you've got live color LEDs on the Xperia Z2, which is going to give you much more vivid colors. Now this is something that a lot of Xperia Z1 and Z users have complained about, is that the displays are not as good in terms of the color representation compared to lots of other competitive devices. Sony have taken that on board, and with the Z2 you've got a much more improved display. In terms of the resolution, you've got 1920 by 1080 on both of these devices, so that's full 1080p resolution. Now because of the difference in screen size, you've got a slight difference in PPI, pixel density. So the Xperia Z1 has a 441 PPI pixel density, the Xperia Z2 has 424 PPI. Now this is very minor difference in terms of the pixel density, so in terms of sharpness and things, you're not really going to notice much of a difference. Now in terms of the build, they're very similar. You've got an aluminium frame with the shatterproof and the scratch resistant glass panels on the front and back. IP58 certified for dust and water resistance, so that feature has been something that's been consistent across Sony devices. The Xperia Z2 actually goes lower in weight as well, so 7 grams less compared to the Sony Xperia Z1. Now we've also got some upgrades in terms of the internals. The Sony Xperia Z1 has a Snapdragon 800 processor clocked at 2.2 GHz quad core. The Sony Xperia Z2 now has a Snapdragon 801 processor quad core 2.3 GHz. So you've got a slight upgrade on the processor side. You've also got an upgrade in terms of the RAM. You've got 3 GB of RAM on the Sony Xperia Z2 versus the 2 GB of RAM on the Sony Xperia Z1. Storage wise, you have the same 16 GB versions on both sides with expandable storage, 64 GB via micro SD card slot. The camera sensor is also the same, so you've got 20.7 megapixel camera sensor on both of the devices, but you've got some massive improvements in terms of the video. Sony Xperia Z2 can now film in 4K Ultra HD video. The Sony Xperia Z1 can only film in 1080p. As well as that, you've got 720p at 120 frames a second, and it's also got time shift software, so this is going to allow you to slow down certain parts of the video. This is very similar to the iPhone 5S, so you've got a nice upgrade here in terms of the video on the Sony Xperia Z2. The front facing camera also has had a bit of an upgrade. You've got a 2.2 megapixel front facing camera compared to the 2 megapixel camera on the Sony Xperia Z1, both capable of filming 1080p HD. In terms of the operating system, although both of these run Android, the Sony Xperia Z2 is going to come with Android KitKat 4.4.2 out of the box, so the latest version of Android. The Sony Xperia Z1 is still on Android Jelly Bean 4.2, so we're still waiting for the update onto KitKat. They both have Sony's UI on top. Sony Xperia Z2 also improves in terms of the sound quality. You've got stereo speakers now, which are going to be facing more towards the front and giving you better quality sound. We've got a slight improvement in terms of the battery as well. We've got 3200 mAh battery on the Z2 versus the 3000 mAh battery on the Z1. That's quite impressive considering that the device is smaller in terms of width and thickness. It's also got a larger screen and it weighs less, but it's still got a larger battery. Neither of these have a removable battery, however. Now in terms of the price, the Xperia Z1, you can currently pick it up for roughly about £400 in the UK, around about $550 in the US. So the price has expectedly dropped since the release. The Xperia Z2, there's no pricing details available as yet, but I'd expect it to be roughly about £600 here in the UK, around about $700 in the US off contract. So these are the standard flagship prices that we're used to seeing, and it comes with a March release date. Now another thing to bear in mind is the Xperia Z1 price may come down further after the release of the Xperia Z2, because that's going to be the new device that's going to supersede the previous one. It's a bit of a risky strategy from Sony because they're releasing devices so often that if you are a Sony user and you're going to be getting a Sony device, you maybe think to yourself, hold on, this is going to be out of date in 6 months and the value of it is going to drop significantly. What do you think anyway? Do you think the Z2 is a good improvement over the Z1? Will you be getting it? Do drop me a comment below and let me know your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, as always, please do hit that thumbs up button for me. It really does help me out. And why not subscribe to the channel? I've got plenty more content coming up on here. Thanks for watching. This is Saf on Super Saf TV, and I'll see you next time. If you want to see more regular videos like this one, then be sure to hit the subscribe button, which will be below. If you're on a mobile device, it may be somewhere else. If you want to see my previous related video, then hit the link right here. If you want to stay in touch over Facebook, Twitter and Google+, then all of the addresses will be there somewhere, as well as direct links in the description below.